I need you to listen carefully now.
The morning before the wedding, the mansion was unusually quiet. Jeremy stood in his navy blue suit, adjusting his tie in the mirror, ready for another day at the office before tomorrow's ceremony. Behind him, the soft whir of a motorized wheelchair broke the silence. "My son, sit." Madame Sarah's voice trembled as she pressed the control button, maneuvering her wheelchair closer. Jeremy turned, concern flooding his features. His mother rarely sounded this shaken. He knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her weathered hands in his, a gesture as familiar as breathing. "Mama, what's wrong?" Madame Sarah's fingers trembled as she unlocked her phone. Without a word, she pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room, Anita's voice, crystal clear and chilling. "Just 48 hours to our wedding. Calm down, all the plans are in place." "I don't love him one bit. After the wedding, once I have access to his company's account, I'll wipe out everything. I've also perfected plans to use his company to defraud a foreign investor of $1 million. Then I'll vanish and he'll be behind bars. Let's see how his crippled mother saves him then." The words hit Jeremy like physical blows. His hands went cold. His vision blurred at the edges. The room seemed to tilt. Where did you get this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Madame Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her gaze remained steady, the same iron strength that had carried them through poverty, through his father's death, through every storm they'd weathered together. "Last night, I was in the hallway. She thought I was asleep in my room, helpless in my chair." A bitter smile crossed her lips. She underestimated what a crippled mother would do to protect her son. The mansion had been alive with wedding preparations. Decorators hung white orchids from the crystal chandeliers. Photographers tested angles in the marble-floored living room. Fabric samples in ivory and gold draped across every surface. The entire estate looked like something from a luxury magazine spread. In the center of this controlled chaos sat Madame Sarah, 75 years old, her body confined to the wheelchair that had been her constant companion for the past decade. She wore a crisp green ankara with a matching head tie, the color of hope, she always said. From her wheelchair, she observed everything with the sharp attention of a general surveying a battlefield. And Madame Sarah had made a sacred promise the day her husband Lucas died, leaving 7-year-old Jeremy in her arms. She would never remarry. Every ounce of her strength, every sacrifice, every prayer would be devoted to her son. And she had kept that promise, every meal carefully budgeted. Every pair of shoes worn until the soles fell apart. Every sleepless night spent sewing clothes for other people's children to afford Jeremy's school fees. No shortcuts, no compromises. Even after the stroke that left her legs useless, she hadn't wavered. If anything, being confined to a wheelchair had sharpened her other senses. She learned to read people through the smallest gestures, a false smile, an impatient sigh, the way someone's eyes shifted when they thought no one was watching. So when Jeremy, now a billionaire CEO, brought home Anita 6 months ago, beautiful, sophisticated, with a smile that could light up a room, Madame Sarah had watched with careful attention. Anita played her role perfectly. She greeted everyone with warmth. She complimented the cooking. She laughed at unfunny jokes. She called Madame Sarah Mama in a sweet, melodious voice. She even insisted on pushing the wheelchair herself, though Madame Sarah preferred using the motorized controls. "You shouldn't have to do everything yourself, Mama," Anita would say, her hands gentle on the wheelchair handles. "Let me help you." But Madame Sarah had noticed things. Small things. The way Anita's smile would slip when she thought no one was looking, replaced by a calculating coldness. The way her eyes would scan the mansion's expensive artwork with an appraiser's assessment. The way she always steered conversations toward Jeremy's business dealings, his investments, his company structure. Most telling was the way Anita spoke about the wheelchair itself. Once, when she thought Madame Sarah was out of earshot, she'd commented to a friend on the phone, "Oh, it's one of those expensive medical chairs. Top of the line. Jeremy spares no expense for his crippled mother, shows he's generous and predictable." The word crippled had been said with such casual dismissiveness, as if Madame Sarah's disability made her invisible, inconsequential. That evening, after the decorators left, and the photographers packed their equipment, Madame Sarah sat in the dim hallway outside her bedroom. She'd told everyone she was retiring early, but sleep wouldn't come. And something felt wrong, a mother's instinct humming beneath her skin. She had rolled her wheelchair into the hallway, intending to get warm water from the kitchen. The chair's motor was nearly silent, a feature she'd appreciated many times. As she approached the kitchen, she heard Anita's voice, sharp and urgent. Madame Sarah stopped, her hand hovering over the wheelchair control. Through the partially open door, she could see Anita pacing, her phone pressed to her ear, her face transformed into something harsh and unfamiliar. "Just 48 hours to our wedding. Calm down." Madame Sarah's heart began to pound. Her hand shook as she quietly reached for her phone in the wheelchair's side pocket. She tapped the record button, holding the device toward the kitchen door. Anita's words poured out, each one a dagger. "All the plans are in place. I don't love him one bit. After the wedding, once I have access to his company's account, I'll wipe out everything. I've also perfected plans to use his company to defraud a foreign investor of $1 million. Then I'll vanish, and he'll be behind bars." Then came the words that burned. Let's see how his crippled mother saves him then. The contempt in those words was absolute. In Anita's mind, a woman in a wheelchair was powerless, harmless, unable to stop what was coming. When the call ended, Anita hummed cheerfully, pouring herself a glass of wine as if she hadn't just outlined a plan to destroy the man she claimed to love. She examined her manicure, smiled at her reflection in the window, and eventually glided past the hallway without a glance. She never saw the wheelchair tucked in the shadows, or the woman sitting in it with tears streaming down her face. Madame Sarah rolled back to her room silently. Once inside with the door locked, she allowed herself to break. She cried the way only a mother can cry when she sees danger circling her child, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire frame. She thought of Lucas, her beloved husband. She thought of Jeremy's tiny hands clutching her dress on his first day of school. She thought of selling her gold wedding ring to pay a hospital bill. She thought of the nights she'd gone to bed hungry so Jeremy could eat. She thought of every sacrifice, every prayer, every moment that had led to this. "God," she whispered, pressing the phone to her chest, "not this, not after everything. Please, not this." But God, she knew, had given her the gift of that recording. The rest was up to her. She dried her tears, straightened her spine in the wheelchair, and began to plan. When morning came, Madame Sarah was ready. She had barely slept. But her mind was clear. She positioned her wheelchair in the living room, her phone charged and ready, and waited for Jeremy. He came down the stairs at 7:30, handsome in his suit, smiling broadly. "Mama, good morning. How are you feeling? Big day tomorrow." "My son, sit." Her voice was calm but carried a weight that made Jeremy's smile fade instantly. He sat on the ottoman beside her wheelchair, taking her hands as he always did. "Mama, what is it? Are you not feeling well? Should I call the doctor?" "Remember our struggles," she said quietly. "Remember the days when we had nothing but each other? Remember how we climbed one painful step at a time?" "Of course, Mama. Always." "Your success is not luck, Jeremy. It's pain that learned to stand up. It's sacrifice that refused to quit. And I swore I would always protect you, no matter what." "Mama, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" She told him everything, the hallway, the phone call, the recording. Her voice remained steady even as she watched her son's face crumble. Then she pressed play. Jeremy listened to Anita's voice, confessing her betrayal, her fraud scheme, her plan to destroy him. He listened once, then grabbed the phone with shaking hands and played it again. And again, as if repetition might change the words. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be. Mama, are you sure?" "Listen to it again, my son." He did. This time when Anita's recorded voice said, "Let's see how his crippled mother saves him then." Jeremy's face hardened. The contempt in those words, the dismissal of his mother as powerless, ignited something fierce in his eyes. "She called you crippled," he said slowly, his voice dangerous. "She mocked you. She thought you couldn't stop her." Yes, Madame Sarah said simply. She thought a woman in a wheelchair was no threat. She was wrong. Jeremy stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged lion. His hands clenched and unclenched. Finally, he picked up his phone and made the call. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson. This is Jeremy." His voice was controlled but firm. "I'm sorry to inform you that the wedding is cancelled." The explosion of shock and anger on the other end was audible even to Madame Sarah. Jeremy listened for a moment, then cut through the protests. "I will explain everything soon, sir, but the wedding will not take place." "I'm sorry." He ended the call and leaned his forehead against his mother's, his eyes closed. "Thank you, Mama. God knows what would have happened if you hadn't." "God kept me here for a reason," she said softly, stroking his cheek. "A crippled mother can still protect her son." That's when the doorbell rang. Jeremy opened the door to find Anita standing there, radiant in a white sundress, holding a gift box wrapped in silver ribbon. Her smile was dazzling. "Baby, surprise! I brought something special for tomorrow." She stopped, reading something in Jeremy's expression. "What's wrong?" "Mama is inside," Jeremy said flatly, not moving aside. "She wants to see you." Anita's smile flickered but held. "Of course, let me greet Mama." She swept past him into the mansion, her perfume trailing like expensive smoke. In the living room, Madame Sarah waited in her wheelchair, positioned in the center of the room. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her face was calm. She looked like a queen on a throne, wheels or no wheels. "Mama, good morning." Anita's voice was syrup-sweet. "I brought you a gift." "Sit," Madame Sarah said. Something in her tone made Anita's smile waver. She sat slowly on the sofa across from the wheelchair, the gift box forgotten in her lap. Jeremy remained standing, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. "Is everything okay?" Anita asked, looking between them. "Yesterday evening," Madame Sarah began, her voice quiet but clear. "You were in the kitchen. Do you remember?" Yes. "I made tea. You made a phone call." Anita's face went carefully blank. "Oh, yes. My cousin called to congratulate me." "Did she?" Madame Sarah lifted her phone from the wheelchair's armrest and placed it on the glass coffee table. The screen showed an audio file, the play button hovering like a red eye. "Would you like to hear the conversation again?" The color drained from Anita's face. What is this?" "The truth," Jeremy said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Before you press play, Anita, I'll give you one chance. Tell us the truth yourself." Anita's eyes darted between the phone, Madame Sarah's unwavering gaze, and Jeremy's hard expression. Her hands tightened around the gift box. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. Madame Sarah's finger moved toward the play button. "Wait," Anita's voice cracked. "Please, don't." "Don't what?" Madame Sarah asked softly. Don't reveal who you really are. Don't show my son that the woman he planned to marry wants to destroy him." "It's not. I can explain." "Then explain," Jeremy said coldly. But before Anita could speak, Jeremy's phone rang. The caller ID showed Barrister Nicholas, and then the doorbell rang again. Loud, insistent. Jeremy strode to the door and pulled it open. Two men in dark suits stood there, badges in hand. "Good morning, sir. A Federal Investigation Unit. We're looking for Miss Anita Johnson." Behind them, a black SUV idled at the gate, engine running. What happened next moved with the terrible momentum of an avalanche. The federal agents had received an anonymous tip, along with evidence, of a planned fraud scheme involving foreign investors. When Madame Sarah quietly provided them with her recording, all their investigation accelerated. Anita was arrested in the living room, handcuffs clicking around her wrists as she screamed denials, then threats, then desperate pleas. Her parents filed a lawsuit for $1 million in damages, claiming Jeremy had humiliated their daughter. The court case became a media sensation. Every Nigerian blog and newspaper ran headlines about the billionaire CEO who cancelled his wedding at the last minute. But when Barrister Nicholas played the recording in Lagos Federal High Court, when Anita's voice filled the courtroom, confessing her scheme and mocking his crippled mother, the gasps were audible. The judge dismissed the case immediately. Anita fled the courtroom in shame, pursued by journalists shouting questions. But the story didn't end there. That evening, Jeremy received an anonymous message. This is not over. She wasn't working alone. The investigation led to Julius, Jeremy's head of finance, a man he'd trusted completely. And then, horrifically, to Kelvin, his COO and closest friend, who had introduced Julius into the company. There was a cyber attack planned for midnight, designed to transfer $1 million to an offshore account under Jeremy's name. The investigation, the betrayals within his own company, the race against time to stop the digital worm crawling through his servers. Through it all, Madame Sarah remained his anchor. When Jeremy wanted to give up, when the betrayals cut too deep, she was there in her wheelchair, her voice steady. Your father built this family on honesty. I raised you on sacrifice. Storms may rage, but destiny cannot be stolen. They stopped the attack with 7 seconds to spare. Julius was arrested. Kelvin faced justice. The conspiracy made national headlines. 10 years later, the garden was warm with afternoon sunlight. Madame Sarah, now 85, sat in her wheelchair beneath the mango tree, a blanket across her lap despite the heat. Her granddaughter Sarah, named in her honor, sat cross-legged at her feet, eyes wide as Mama finished another folktale. And that's why the tortoise's shell has cracks, Madame Sarah concluded with a smile. Tell another one, Mama, little Sarah begged. Tomorrow, my dear. Mama is tired now. Inside the mansion, Jeremy stood with his wife Isabella, watching through the window. Isabella, the gentle accountant he'd met 2 years after the Anita disaster, had restored his faith in love. Or their marriage had been simple, genuine, everything his first engagement was not. Your mother is amazing, Isabella said softly. Even now, in that wheelchair, she's the strongest person I know. Jeremy nodded, his throat tight. She saved me, you know, not just from Anita, from myself, from becoming bitter, from giving up on everything. She's a warrior. She's my hero. That night, when Jeremy helped his mother into bed, she caught his hand. My son, I need to tell you something. What is it, Mama? I'm tired, Jeremy. So tired. But I'm not afraid. I've seen you safe. I've seen you loved. I've held my granddaughter. I've done what God kept me here to do. Mama, don't talk like that. Listen, she said firmly, her grip surprisingly strong. When I'm gone, I want you to remember something. Being crippled in body doesn't mean being crippled in spirit. These wheels carried me into that hallway. This chair helped me save you. Never forget that strength comes in many forms. I'll never forget, Mama. Never. She smiled, her weathered face beautiful in the lamplight. Good. Now go to your wife. Love her well. Raise my granddaughter to be strong. And remember, a mother's love has no disability. 3 days later, Madame Sarah passed away peacefully in her sleep, her wheelchair positioned beside her bed like a faithful companion. At the funeral, Jeremy stood before hundreds of mourners and told the story. How his crippled mother, confined to a wheelchair, underestimated and dismissed, had rolled silently into a hallway and recorded the truth that saved his life. The woman the world saw as disabled, Jeremy said, in his voice breaking, was the most able person I've ever known. She taught me that true strength isn't about walking, it's about standing up for what's right, no matter what form that stand takes. Anita called her his crippled mother with contempt, thinking she was powerless, but Mama proved that a wheelchair is just a chair with wheels. The person sitting in it, that's where the power lives. Years later, when little Sarah asked about her namesake, Jeremy took her to the garden where a statue stood, Madame Sarah in her wheelchair, her face strong and proud, her hands folded in her lap. Your grandmother, Jeremy told her, was confined to a wheelchair but never confined in spirit. She was called Crippled, but she was the strongest person who ever lived. Remember that, Sarah. Remember that disability is only in the eyes of those too blind to see true strength. Little Sarah touched the bronze wheels of the statue. I'll remember, Papa, I promise. And somewhere, perhaps Madame Sarah smiled, knowing that her legacy lived on, not in spite of her wheelchair, but because she had shown the world that a crippled mother's love could move mountains, stop fraudsters, and change everything. One day before a wedding, she had done exactly that. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Asterisk.